Team 12 gets a victory trying to keep up with Team Freedom, and if they can get the victory over Team Freedom next weekend, things will be looking pretty good. As you can hear, we are just about to get into our next series, though, and it looks to be a good one as it's Simplicity taking on Tempo Storm.
Yeah, Simplicity trying to make their mark here in 2018. So far, they've done a good job of it. Just the results haven't been there in terms of wins in the series. They've had a lot of wins in the games. They just haven't gotten over that hump, and they're going to have a tough test against Tempo Storm. Could it be in for a very interesting series the way these teams play?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to talk about, especially when it comes to drafting, to the play styles. So let's get into the standings so we can get to the good stuff. Here we see Team 12 and getting that win over Gale Force. They're sitting at 3-1. And with the 4-0 of Team Freedom, we haven't seen Team 12 and Team Freedom play yet. Tempo Storm beat Team 12 and last weekend, but fell to Team Freedom. So for Team 12 to get a win over Freedom next weekend kind of locks us into this three-way tie for the 1, 2, 3 that we see so far. But there are teams that are starting to climb up, and Gale Force getting a win over Space Station. They're trying to make their stamp on having that number 4 spot.
Yeah, and Simplicity is trying to fight them for it. I mean, that's the whole thing, is that Simplicity dropped their series to Gale Force in the opening week. So the standings are pretty critical. You come into the tie, you got tiebreakers, you've got win-loss. There's a whole lot of things we won't go into now. But it is very crucial for them to get that. This would put them at 2-2. They'll have another series to try and move their way up. And if they take down Tempo Storm, that brings Tempo down a notch, and it really makes that race a little bit more, I guess, involved in the amount of teams that we could potentially have in that 3, 4, or 5 spot. Mostly the 3, 4, obviously, because that gets you to the clash.
Yeah, it is. It's very important for all of these teams not to drop games, not to drop series, but especially even games, because if you get into those tie situations, the head-to-heads and how many games that you've won and lost will come into play too, and it all comes down to seeding and the spots for the Western Clash. Let's hear from Som and Hosty about this next series.
Right now, the top 3 of NA looks really contested with Freedom, Team 12, and Tempo Storm. Personally, I believe Tempo Storm has the highest skill ceiling. I don't know if they'll be able to reach it, but it's really exciting to watch them. I feel like we have a really good shot. You know, we've been competing against the top teams. We're never out of any of the games. We're always in there. So we definitely need some more improvement to contest top 3, but this is hot, so anybody can win. You know, when a lot of people look at our team Simplicity, they see a lot of old players that, you know, had success but dropped off. But we're really looking to make a comeback right now. So cheer for us against Tempo Storm, and we're going to continue to get better and surprise people.
I think the team spirit after losing to Freedom, it was definitely hard at first, but you know, we're all vets in the scene and we're able to bounce back. I think Simplicity is one of those teams where they're either very strong on their on days, but on their off days they seem very, very weak. Simplicity's main strength would also be their team fighting ability. I feel like their rotational play might be on the weaker side. I think if you're the favorite team, you don't want to play the series out on what would be the underdog's main strength. So even though our biggest strength is our team fighting ability, what we want to be focusing on is hitting their weak points, which is rotational and macro aspect. If we follow that game plan, I think that you'll be seeing a pretty clean series from us.
I think it's really cool that we had Som and Hosty giving the interviews for this match. I've been looking at Hanzo players for all of the teams, and the thing that separates the North American Hanzo players is their KD ratio, how many kills they're getting per how many deaths. And when you look at both Hosty and Som, they have some of the most games played as Hanzo. We're looking at Som, 6 games, 4.8 kills per game, 1.7 deaths. Hosty, 7 games, 3 kills, 1.4 deaths. So those two have some of the biggest KD ratios. And then the next one up that, I would look at, keep your eye on Crowan though. He only has 3 games, 4.3 kills, and only 0.3 deaths. So I'm really excited to see if we get more Crow and Hanzo tomorrow because of that. But Jayhao, who's standing out to you as you look at some of the stats?
Well, when I look at it, you know, you can see differences on both teams. When it comes to play styles, that's my main focus. When we look at the side of Simplicity, whether it's on King Caffeine or Zuna, it seems to be that the old Muradin god that we knew as King Caffeine not working out. He's 0-3. He also averages his most deaths on that. Alternatively, you look at his ETC. He's played that 6 times. He's 4-2. Far less deaths. Same can be said for Zuna. Zuna, when he plays heroes like Tychus, Li Ming, more backline-oriented heroes, his deaths per game drop significantly. The minute you put him on to different heroes like the Gray Main in particular, his deaths skyrocket. So when you look at both of these players, they're more opportunistic, and I think when they play a safer style and play to the compliments and play around the Hosty style, even when he's played Tassadar, obviously, on Zuna, it seems that their play style is much better, much more reserved, and much more calculated as opposed to trying to take those high-risk plays that we've seen in the past. So for me, those are 2 big standouts when I look at Simplicity.
Now, as we get to looking at the maps for this series, Hosty and K1 really do feel like the glue that is binding that aggressive style together. The ban's Brexus holdout for Simplicity, though no one has been picking it, it still is the consistent ban for Simplicity. Tempo Storm is going to go back to a Battlefield of Eternity ban and picks Dragonshire. Dragonshire is a really important win for both of these teams. It is a main favorite for both of the teams, and Hanzo and ETC definitely heroes that we need to watch out for. But I was glad in that interview that we heard from Sam talk about how important he felt it was to capitalize on the weak point of Simplicity's rotation. Tempo has shown 2 styles. The first one versus Heroes Hearth, where they made fast rotations, like on this map. They got a big early lead, and then they just snowballed it. But they also try to come back from behind versus Freedom and Team 12, and that's sort of worked out for them. It was enough to get 1 win, but that's also what Simplicity would prefer.
Yeah, Simplicity for sure. They're looking to invade in camps early, and if their draft kind of plays to that style, I would not be surprised. I think the Hanzo Greymane are definitely going to be 2 points of contention here for both of these teams early in their drafts.
Yeah.
Again, if I'm on the side of Simplicity, I might look to play more. If you can get Hanzo on the early part for Hosty, maybe play something a little bit more reserved like the Tychus. For Zuna, probably be a little bit more preferable, but I don't know if Hanzo's going to make it through.
Well, Tyrael hasn't, as he's been banned. Hanzo's going to be a tricky one for both of these teams. Ideally, both want it, unless we've seen a drastic change-up in favor in order to prepare for the series from either of the teams. Genji ban.
Hanzo's made it through. ETC's still available. This is a great start for me if I'm Simplicity.
Definitely. I agree. Now the fear of the Tassadar. Typically, Tassadar doesn't do too well against a Hanzo, so trying to get that as a counter pick. Hanzo's been played 6 games versus Tassadar across all regions and has not lost to Tassadar yet, so that's not exactly the styling to go for Tempo Storm. It would just be more what they can do to go around that instead of trying to counter pick it.
The one thing that if I'm Simplicity, you got to keep an eye on is the potential of a Zeratul. And here we get Medivh Greymane. We've already seen the flexibility. Medivh being played by either Psalm or Glaurung, both very capable, and Greymane in there as well. The threat of Zeratul is always going to be there with this team. And the last time we saw them on Dragonshire, Glaurung went off. I mean, statistically on Zeratul, he's averaging 3.3 kills per game, while only averaging, Gilly, 1 death per game. For Zeratul players, that's almost unheard of. It's a very high-risk, high-reward scenario. Even the best Zeratul players in the world generally have about 1.3, 1.5 deaths per game. Obviously, this is a newer Zeratul. It's limited game pool, but still something to keep an eye out for if you're keeping an eye on Zeratul Clairon.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because Hanzo and Zeratul were the 2 heroes I was looking at for this weekend, and looking at different players for it, and most games are either played by Beacon or Glaurung, but we've seen a few other ones, and deaths are the big deal. That's the defining factor. Everyone gets around the same kills in general as Glaurung with the Zeratul, but most are also averaging the same amount or more deaths in a game, and it's Glaurung with that 1 death that is the big separating factor. Malthael and Uther, Simplicity willing to get Malthael earlier on in the draft, like we saw from Gale Force Esports, and that's been the one melee assassin that Airho will flex over to other than playing his normal, more tanky heroes.
Yeah, the success hasn't been there. Dahaka has been one of his better heroes, despite the only problem is late game picks have hurt them. And on Towers of Doom, they ran into that. And it's not that he's played it bad overall, it's just that a few small moments can be very defining, and that's kind of the part that hurt him. Other than that, he's actually played it really well. It does well on this battleground, but it's not going to be the case here as Malthael was picked up. Haven't seen a lot of his Malthael yet.
No, but that Tomb game versus Team 12, he played a pretty fantastic Malthael, was going for constant flanks. One time got picked, but by that time he had No One Can Stop Death, so he's back. And Malthael with Fear the Reaper, with Inevitable End, even with the way that you can make sure you have your Reaper's Mark, Tormented Souls, you can survive long enough for your team to come back in. That's what we're seeing from Malthael, is if he gets picked, generally the team can rotate in time to help save him, especially with the Hanzo and the Dragon's Arrow to slow things down.
No cattle for cattle, so I think they've got something up their sleeves here. It's been one of his most successful heroes so far, also his most played hero, with 7 games coming in. That's half of their games that they've played coming into this weekend. So not even trying to see if Simplicity will ban it out against them. They might have a few tricks coming in here. See what they end up with.
I wonder if we would see a Cattle Diablo with the Medivh, though that combo struggled for Gale Force in the last series, but would give a lot of aggression for Cattle. There's some other things there, though. Abathur banned for Simplicity. That's a fairly interesting one.
Anubarak Medivh doesn't exactly stand out on Dragonshire to me. I think we get an Anubarak here, deal with either the Tormented Souls or isolating the Uther.
That's what I was thinking. Anubarak, maybe even the Stukov.
Stukov has been highly prioritized on the other side for K1 Pro, so he's very well versed in what that can bring to the table.
Would help with that bottom lane pressure too, although if Tempo Storm wanted to get Lucio for June, which is his highest played hero right now, they would have Sound Barrier as a way of making sure that Tormented Souls doesn't get too much done in a team fight.
I really wonder, because Tassadar made it through, if Simplicity will get Tassadar on the back end of that draft. And then if they do, Tempo has last pick, and that's where they might be able to flex the Zeratul.
Oh.
Yeah, they end up with the Stitches. Got a few tricks up their sleeve, indeed. As the Stitches get them to the roots. Potentially Cursed Bullet coming out this game to make sure you get that single target blow up, that isolation.
And Stitch's Medivh has been a beloved combo for a lot of teams. All right, last 2 picks for Simplicity. Here's where maybe we might see the Tassadar. Simplicity also has not been afraid of running a double support, with Zuna playing the Uther in the past.
I think they ran that with the Malfurion, though. I don't know how it works right now with other supports. We haven't seen a whole lot of double support outside of that. But the Tassadar, I think, would be okay here. I'd almost like to see an Anubarak. You get that frontline control. You also have an escape out if you do get hooked in. Johanna would be the next best bet. This music is making it intense.
It is. Li Ming Johanna. Alright, Li Ming has been a pretty good pick for Zuna so far that we've seen. Not as many games as his Tychus or his Greymane. Actually, no, same amount of games as his Tychus. Not as much as his Jaina or his Greymane. But the game that he played Li Ming, it worked out really well for them.
We still, I mean, Greymane is not a terrible solo laner. He just doesn't normally fit that role. So we still need a solo. Malthael already picked up. Get the Dahaka. Just keep it standard, keep it simple. Go Dahaka. Take advantage of the global. Maybe we get some early invades using the portals and a global from Dahaka from Tempo Storm. Conversely, I mean, Johanna and Li Ming, as well as Hanzo, especially in the choke points around the Siege Giants, definitely have really good poke. So there's a lot to consider. The one thing that Stitches does have going for him is Dampen Magic. Sometimes, depending on the enemy team, you pick it, you don't. One of the stronger level 1 talents for dealing with mage styles.
Yeah, there's pretty good wave clear from both sides to make sure that they can keep up with the mid bot. So a lot's going to come down to the top lane and how the Dahaka, the Glaurung Dahaka, is going to fare versus the Malthael of Erho. We'll see if teams want to go and try to get some picks on that. You know, Medivh is definitely a factor to consider for Erho's Malthael in trying to make sure that he stays safe from that. But other than that, it seems like it's a good setup from both sides to make sure that they can stay strong and not fall victim to really early structural damage that we saw from the last game.
Yeah, I mean, It's all about utilization of the Greymane. I mean, you can eat some shots with Stitches. If you can get Greymane up there, get some early structure damage like we've seen some of the other teams, that's just kind of how you start to get that small lead, utilize the camps. That's going to be a big part of the early game, is going to be the camp prioritization, who can really get the push in.
Well, let's get to it. Tempo Storm versus Simplicity on Dragonshire, a favored battleground for both our teams, so both are looking for the win here.
As we head into game number 1, we've got Tempo Storm on the left here in blue. That's going to consist of Cattle on the Stitches. Psalm will be on Medivh, June on Malfurion, Fan on the Greymane, and Dahaka, of course, by Glaurung.
Meanwhile, in the red, Simplicity looking for their second win. We have got Hosty playing Hanzo, K1 Pro on Uther, King Caffeine. He'll be playing Johanna, Zuno will be on Li Ming, and finally Erho playing the Malthael.
You know, right out of the gate, no dampen magic for Stitches. Sometimes when you're trying to get that single target isolation, you have the Medivh who doesn't have that great follow-up like Greymane. Try and get a little bit more damage in. He's going into the slam build, making sure to get more damage.
Slam build also helps with more of the wave clear. Looking at what Simplicity has with the Johanna. Trying to take control of that more between that and the cocktails. And damage of Fan into the Greymane. Glaurung is here for the 5v5 fight. And he'll start to head up, as well as Malthael as they go up for the top lane. Psalm's going to go with them, though.
I like the fact that Simplicity took that long approach. Both times we've seen Tempo on this map, they'll use that point in the middle and catch people on rotations and try and get early picks. This time, Johanna can walk through there, well, because she's Johanna and she has iron skin. Everybody else took the long route home. And respectfully so against this team. Yeah,
these portals are going to make the difference of this mid-bot rotation. Although Simplicity do have that good wave clear, they're going to have to deal with those portals back and forth super fast. Because of that, we're seeing Simplicity leave Johanna in the mid. She can keep that lane at bay. And then the tri-lane still frees up and allows Hanzo to be around that camp so they can start with the early camping. Psalm is spotted out that Simplicity are going for their camp. Tempo Storm. They're going to go through using that portal. Cattle takes it back. Enough people from Tempo have been able to get their camp that Simplicity are going to have to lead this, especially with Glaurung stalking in.
Yeah, Glaurung's stalked in. And now if you're Tempo, you need to do something with this. Erho in the top lane on Malthael will get a little bit of an advantage in terms of experience. As long as he can clear these quick enough, the minions, every minion that dies, and this is up to Erho to stop the rotation. That's exactly what he's doing. One of the best things that you can do if you're in a solo is to wait till they come. It denies experience. Sometimes we think, all right, it denied 2 to 3 minions. In the pro scene, that's a big deal. And so what he did is he stood there, and on the other side, Glaurung knew that he'd potentially be there, just enough to get the slow rotation. Small part, big effect.
Fan now gets caught. Tempo Storm have done such a great job of keeping back Simplicity just because of the Psalm, this Medivh play, and being able to put Fan into a position to get that Worgen damage done to the structures. But Arrow doing his job, holds on to the top, not allowing a Dragon Knight to be obtained. Fan has already rotated out though, and having the Bruisers earlier on to help with Dahaka is going to be a big deal for Tempo Storm. Maybe being able to take that top and put some more pressure onto Simplicity, either there or somewhere else.
I'm really curious to see how Simplicity is going to respond to this Night Cam up the top. I mean, they don't have a ton, so Erho's taking a bit of damage here. He's going to try and juke, but good positioning.
He's held for a long time, but the drag seals the deal. First blood for Tempo Storm, as the bruisers will be picked up there. And that's even a bigger problem, that Tempo ahead of Fan getting those bruisers, sent Psalm up, got the pick on Erho. Now Simplicity has to keep Johanna in the top. And this is a place, it's going to be these little things, but these little things are going to pay off for Tempo Storm and set them up to have that first Dragon Knight and get more done.
They get more done. That Night Camp, when you look at Li Ming and Hanzo, a lot of ability damage there, so it's hard to clear these up effectively, but the DK being picked up. Zuno coming in on an aggressive flank. Got to be careful to boot, although I think Erho just got booted moments ago.
At least the bottom camp taken. Simplicity responding to losing Erho in the bottom are going to make Tempo Storm deal with something, and having that in the bottom lane is less of a push for the Dragon Knight in that lane. So they keep the Dragon in mid anyway. It's a really early Dragon Knight too, so the most you can do is try to maybe get some towers down somewhere, unless they got a lot of kills, unless they had more damage done to this bottom lane. But Simplicity have been doing their best to make sure that they can keep things relatively clear.
Keep it clear, but we're looking at a level lead. Getting the gates down, good value, and then the top. I mean, that is, it's early, but getting that amount of fort wall, the amount of fort walls down is pretty significant enough to give them a 1-level lead.
Yeah, that level lead, the structures, the kick, Master's Touch for Som, so this is his time to try to stack those up. Spotting out. Oh, he was giving vision, hoping for the hook, but quick on the uptake. King Caffeine says, no thank you.
I've been around the block a time or two. You're not getting me this time.
I've played a Stitches or 5.
Well, we got another invade. Tempo Storm making full use of this. And Glaurung back in again.
Comes in, pushes back. Zuna and K1 Pro. Giants taken. Bottom gets worse and worse for Simplicity. They have that top camp, but so much of Tempo Storm coming down has forced Simplicity down in response to that. So they just have the Bruisers pushing from that Malthaeum. Tempo Storm right about to get heroic abilities.
Well, the thing about that is that the timing of it is going to be difficult for Simplicity because the shrines will be active soon, and Tempo will have 10. I don't think there's going to be enough time for Simplicity to get that. They have enough control over the battleground, and they have tools to hold a shrine, but this could very easily just be back-to-back DKs at 6 minutes in.
Simplicity has not, they're not a stranger to this situation. This is sort of what happened to them when they played versus Team 12 on this map too. Team 12 just sort of choked them out of these possible fights that Simplicity is known to want to get. And of course, Tempo Storm talked about how they feel like, yes, they're a team fighting team, but in this case, because Simplicity is so much weaker on the early game they feel than they are, they want to really take advantage of that. They want to punish that weakness of Simplicity. But Simplicity aren't too far behind. They haven't lost any forts yet. They did lose a lot of towers. Now Glaurung comes in, catches Airho. Som is on his way up too to this, and Greymane is as well. Airho's got to get out of here.
Now they've got the Poly.
And
So,
Gorge.
yeah, we're going to have the Hook, Gorge, Portal, Poly combo.
Cursed Bullet, Twilight Dream.
One
Roots.
person is going to have a hard time. A very hard time. I think the scariest part is that it will likely just be a Tormented Souls. Oh my.
It was the Tormented Souls. And the Gorge does stop with that. Gorge catches Zuna, who's going to teleport out. There's no way for safety of that. And a beautiful Polybomb on K1 Pro to stop him from giving the Divine Shield and maybe saving Zuna's life there. Well done for Tempo Storm. Not only gives them another kill, it lets them set up for the next Dragon Knight.
They were so close to opening that fight up with a kill on the Psalm. So close. We're not able to get it, and then Tempo Storm turned the fight. That's like just counterpuncher right there.
And Psalm was only at 13 stacks.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, it would have been a setback for Tempo Storm and what they were hoping to set up. I mean, the big deal now is this second Dragon Knight, and with the towers down and snowballing that out. They also have the Mercenary camp on top, so this is a double split push for Tempo Storm. This is the moment you look on as them being able to secure the game and their spot all the way into the late game, being able to take out fort like this.
Malthael coming in, potentially looking for the flank. You cannot come in directly on that flank unless that DK is almost dead, because you'll just get booted right behind the gate wall or somewhere near there. And the fact that we have the Portal and Gorge definitely makes that a scary prospect.
Yeah, it was cool to see the Gorge pick up for a way of maybe being able to deal with Tormented Souls if necessary, as we've seen a lot of Sanctification used, a Sound Barrier for that too, but Cocoon and Gorge, these are things that can be done to help. There is Hand of Protection for Simplicity, and once he gets to 13, you'll have Inevitable into, so there are ways for Simplicity to try to make sure that Airho gets max value out of Tormented Souls. But it's going to be a bit now, as Tempo Storm get the 4, they get another pick on Zuna. Things are going Tempo Storm's way.
Definitely going their way. I mean, they use the isolation, making sure he couldn't portal over. They also used the polymorph, so things are working really well. Communication definitely on point for Tempo Storm. They've gotten a couple kills, and they've turned it into a lot more. And it's all really been about a team effort. This is not an individual effort like we saw before, where one person kind of comes in and cleans up. All parts of this machine are functioning together and very well.
Well-oiled cogs for Tempo Storm as they attempt to siege alongside some of these camps in the bottom lane. Dahaka is going to do the dual soak thing. That mid port is fairly low, and that just would set up rotations even more aggressively for Tempo Storm if they could start to work that thing down. Maybe we'll see them rotate through that after taking out these towers, or maybe we'll see them try to threaten a hook. They've got the portal down too.
This is, again, with a Li Ming and Hanzo, it's a lot of ability damage, especially going into scatter shot build.
Gorge
so
portal.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, Divine Shield enables Hanzo to get out from the Twilight Dream follow-up from that. And with that, Simplicity keeps the keep alive. Now they're turning things around. Polybomb immediately as Malthael went into Tormented Souls. You can see that heal reduction as he gets even further in. But the Tormented Souls is down. Now he's just relying on keeping that Reaper's Mark going as they bring down Medivh. But he finished his Master's Touch, so don't you worry, Medivh fans.
Well, I mean, still, that's some sign of progress.
As soon as he went down, Jayhao and I's head snapped to the middle monitor to look at talent. I didn't see it up on the side. I was paying attention to other things, so I was like, oh man, I hope he finished that. But he did.
He did. I mean, it gives him some semblance of control for the moment as we see Malthael on the mini-map. Getting that, they've got a little bit of lockdown. Cattle, that incredibly high health pool. Greymane's mid. He's going to have to rotate. Well, it's a good response with the Wave of Force.
Ooh.
Cattle. Oh, Zuna! Look, man, this guy is always willing to take the risk. He's like, what if I just use my Blinking Calamity right over the gate?
Oh, they'll use ISO for that. That's a worthy trade to get that kill. Gets Tempo Storm close to 16, no airho for 30 seconds, but with this Dragonite, Simplicity need to use it somehow, salvage the situation. They'll get towers and rotate it down to the bottom. Zuna's gonna go to the top to stop that push from Glaurung. He has been persistently annoying the other lanes while Tempo Storm distract Simplicity with this bottom lane.
DK, though, catching them up a bit in experience, no longer finding themselves a level and a half, almost 2 levels down. Glaurung, however, coming in on the backside. Iron Skin already used.
It's used, it's gonna be down, but maybe they can trade it. Had the Hand of Protection too, even Divine Shield. Oh man, that Polybomb looked scary. Arcane Rift takes out Johanna. And the Tempo Storm with 16 working on more. They use the portal, get the drag, pull in that Uther. K1 Pro in danger, there's no Divine Shield here. And now Caterpillar uses the Chaos as an opportunity to pull in Hosty. Uther down and far away with that Ghost. 3 kills, this keep very low. Tempo Storm moving on for more.
They might try and end it. I mean, it'd be a bit ambitious at this point. Yeah, they second-guessed it. They looked at their composition. Greymane's enough. Stitches go slam build, but overall, Death Timer's a little bit too short. Li Ming was still up. Malthael is just too much risk there.
Yeah, Li Ming and Malthael are pretty formidable. Lower cooldown timers too would have made that more of a thing. Johanna came back up. Zuna does a lot. Portals out Cattle. Tempo Storm just setting up, pushing these lanes so that they can get set up for the next Dragonite phase. But Simplicity, they're 16 now. Now is their time to fight.
It is, and their time to fight is going to be limited from here on out. A DK much later in the game can end that, as we saw earlier, a team fight around that. So Simplicity is going to have to start forcing just a little bit. They don't necessarily have hard engagement tools outside of a Johanna Blessed Shield. The Dragon Arrow can hopefully set up a few things, and they really have to execute, but everything so far between the Polybomb, the Hand of Protection, the Gorge, a lot of it's been tough to deal with, and you know they've gotten a couple kills. They're going to need a lot more to catch up and then hopefully take control of this game.
Yeah, Tempo Storm has had a lot of control over Airho in the fights. Between the Polybomb, Gorge is a possible ability too, even the Isolation. But Simplicity have been willing to make sure that they're along the same line taking care of him with the cleanse. He has he doesn't have inevitable in, so it's a lot on both Divine Shield, the Hand of Protection too, but they're doing their best to make sure that he gets into position where they can get set up and start getting those resets for Zuna. Simplicity fighting down in the bottom. Dahaka about to stalk in.
About to stalk in, and they're turning the fight. Tormented Souls is out, but Glaurung is scooting on out of there, uses the isolation onto the Malthael. You're going to look for the re-engage. Zuna's looking for that one reset, but he takes a cocktail to the face.
He goes down. Twilight Dream takes out Hanzo as he was gorged in as well. Drag The Divine Shield will save the life of Airhope for now, and he and Calf and K1 Pro are still hoping that they can make something happen here. But without their ranged damage dealers, they know that it is all down to this. Even if they had just backed up, it would have been a Dragon Knight, and the keep already down to that 2 Tempo Storm. Being able to get those 2 kills on Zuna and then taking in Hosty. The Dragon's Arrow was so close to stopping Tempo Storm from going through the portal. It just wasn't quite there. And that saved Tempo Storm and let them turn the fight.
Things just did not work out there. Close in a couple of these, but the power of Medivh. And, you know, after what we saw in our series earlier, we saw the Medivh. Let's take this another second. 60%. There we go. DK will be here momentarily, and it'll be over before he ever gets here. But we go back to our earlier series. We saw Dansky play a mean Medivh, and then all of a sudden it's just like, look, we're not dealing with Medivh anymore. And they just banned him out for the rest of the games. Well, I think one more game, but will that warrant it this series? Because that was really good play and coordination by Tempo Storm there.
It was. And it's, you said it. You got 2 Medivh players, you're going to play well with the Medivh. I think it's completely map dependent. Maybe Simplicity picks map choice and then goes to a map where it's less favorable for Tempo Storm, and then they don't have to worry about it as much, or they're more okay with dealing with it if that is the case. But otherwise, yeah, Som made that pick look pretty good.
One of the things that you have to do if you're going against the Gorge composition of Stitches, you know, you have to have more than one tool of CC. You have the Bless Shield is not enough. It can be cleansed. You can go through. You have to find some disruption, whether it's a power slide in, a boot back, anything beyond that. They had a Bless Shield and the Dragon Arrow, and that was pretty much it. Uther generally wasn't in position enough, and that's where he should be, right? So you got to have different ways. You got to have counter engage, a Nubarak, a Cocoon, a Slow, an Impale. Anything around those tools would have maybe been a little bit better. In hindsight is good, but when you're drafting, and you got to keep in mind that you already saw the Medivh, the Stitches came in later. The Johanna pick was nice and safe, but Johanna wasn't the one getting picked. It was everybody else, and that was the problem.
Let's take a look at that last team fight, because it came down to a very, very close situation. Because a lot of people from Tempo Storm were low, and there ends up being a portal that a Dragon's Arrow just just narrowly misses. Also, Zuna was so close to getting resets. Had he gotten a reset, Dominance would have came in and been more of a factor, and a lot of Tempo Storm was low. So it just really did come down to the wire, and Tempo Storm with just slightly more of that synergy, and they came out on top.
And that was so close.
And then Zuna there goes in, as the Wave of Force almost gets Cattle, but instead, great cocktail by Fan. And in the midst of that, I felt like Cattle did such a good job of the chaos and taking advantage of that to get the Gorges. And same with the Glaurung and the Drags.
But they were so close. Had Cattle gone down there, that's Zuna getting a reset, getting his dominance proc, and then probably dominating that fight. And Cattle was so close to death and just makes it out of there. And not only did he make it out of there, but he made it out of there with a Hanzo in his belly.
Yep, he had lunch. He had his cake and he ate it too. That cake's title was Hanzo. I don't know what that means. Let's go.